everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Wisconsin Living once again. Happy you joined me. Got some breaking news on the Bill Cosby front that just dropped in the news. And it's saying that he was sentenced rather, to 3 to 10 years in prison. Finally, after being convicted, which is what I initially said back in April, for the drugging and sexual assault of Andrea Constand. For anybody that is familiar with that case, you'll know that Miss Constand's case is the last case that had not been, that was still able to be charged and had not ran out under the statute of limitations. So Bill Cosby, 81 years old, sentenced 3 to 10 years in prison just now at the Montgomery County Courthouse in Norristown, Pennsylvania. He did not make a statement during the hearing. While he was sentenced, Judge Stephen O'Neill deemed Cosby a sexually violent predator, meaning he must undergo lifetime counseling, report quarterly to authorities, and appear on a sex offender registry. So now Bill Cosby, as of today, right now, is a convicted sex offender, and rightfully so. This case was brought about after 60 plus women decided to come forward and accused Cosby of sexual assault. Some people may say that the sentence was too light. He could face a maximum sentence of 30 years for this, 10 for each of the 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault with which he had been convicted. But 3 to 10 years. He's 81 years old. No matter what time he serves, he got off the hook. Most definitely, he got off the hook for what he did. And whether he lives to be 83 or he lives to be 90, won't be enough time, that's for sure. He was once known as America's Dad. And like I said, he had been accused of sexual misconduct by 60 different women. Constant case, which is the one that he was just sentenced and convicted for, is the only one that resulted in criminal charges. And of course, another piece to this is that throughout this, Cosby completely denied any sort of responsibility, and he maintained his innocence throughout, in spite of overwhelming evidence and statements to the contrary by, like I said, 60 plus women. Who knows how many women decided to not come forward. So that number, the true number, will never be known. These are just the women that put themselves out there, which is a scary prospect on its own. So Miss Constand is a former Temple University employee. She's currently 45. Cosby's currently 81. So if you do the math on that, he's 26 years older? No, excuse me, 36 years older than her. So Miss Constand testified over 2 days in mid-April that Cosby gave her wine and 3 blue pills. This was this guy's shtick. You know, he drugged people. He drugged these women. where they became completely immobile and mentally they were in and out of consciousness, and they couldn't react, they couldn't move. So he had his way with them. But as they would come back into consciousness, they were very much aware of what was going on and very much not in agreement with what was going on. So in all these instances, he was raping these women against their will. So it goes on to say that Cosby gave her wine and 3 blue pills to take the edge off, he'd tell her, before he sexually assaulted her at his home near Philadelphia in January 2004. This case was. This one case that was still able to be prosecuted because it had not, like I said, it was still a chargeable offense. So in 2004, 14 years ago, that would have put Cosby at 67 years old. So at 67, this creep was still doing this. 67 years old. Ms. Constant stated that when the sexual assault happened, I was a young woman brimming with confidence and looking forward to a future bright with possibilities. She wrote this in a 5-page victim statement submitted to the court this week. Now, almost 15 years later, I'm a middle-aged woman who's been stuck in a holding pattern for most of her adult life, unable to heal fully or to move forward. Cosby's first trial ended in a hung jury back in 2017. I don't know if you all remember that. He subsequently had a second trial where he was found guilty and convicted on 3 counts in this particular case. Since that trial, he's been out on bail, $1 million bail, since April. But he had not been allowed by the court to leave his home without written permission. Of course, his lawyers are doing the usual runaround and saying that they plan on appealing his convictions due to his declining health and post-philanthropic efforts. I really feel like I butchered that word. Sorry if I did. Cosby's wife, Camille Cosby, and their daughters, Erica, Aaron, and Evan, have stood by him throughout the case, of course. Camille, 74, released a lengthy, blistering statement after her husband's conviction 5 months ago, in which she said, in part, "This is mob justice, not real justice." Which, how pathetic is that, you know? So this Cosby's conviction is going to go down as the first major conviction that's tied to the whole Me Too movement, which, as you all know, is a sort of a movement to bring light to the misdeeds of men in power on an individual basis, but then it's been kind of lumped into this movement that they've put a label on. For all intents and purposes, it's a good thing. The only danger to that, in my opinion, is the incredible damage that you can do to somebody's character just by making that sort of assertion without, and this is, once that assertion is made public, in a lot of cases it can just completely destroy somebody, whether it's a public figure or a private figure. So there's always this this danger of, you know, perhaps something that was misunderstood, or perhaps a a completely innocent man, you know, being accused of inappropriate behavior which never even happened, or was misconstrued as something that might have been offensive and maybe blown out of proportion uh, by the other party in an attempt to defame or cause some basically an attempt to assassinate their character. Now, I'm not saying that's happening in this case. I believe wholeheartedly that this guy is a creep, a lifetime creep. He's a lifetime sexual assaulter. He's a rapist. He's scum on earth, and I'm glad. I wish that this would have came and happened a long time ago, because now this guy's 81 years old, supposedly in failing health. How long is this guy going to live behind bars? You know, he's been a free man for 81 years. And so, yeah, he got sentenced to 3 to 10 years. But he's still getting the last laugh because he got away with this for decades. We're talking about 60 women here that accused him. I'm looking for details on how the 3 to 10. I'm assuming I'm gonna read more here. I want to find out. It's 3 to 10 years. Does that mean he can get out sooner than 3 years, or what's the deal? So he was sentenced, found guilty of 3 counts of felony aggravated indecent assault. Of course, this was one of the most widely publicized trials in modern history. The first one being the O.J. Simpson trial back in '94, which I remember vividly. That really changed it. That's when this whole public trial phenomenon and attention kind of started back then. So the sentence is significantly lighter than the possible maximum for his crimes. Each of those charges, those 3 charges, carried up to 10 years in prison, meaning he could have served a 30-year max. However, the DA asked the judge to sentence Cosby to 5 to 10 years in state prison. However, Cosby's defense team argued that even that would cause excessive hardship, the nerve, excessive hardship to the elderly star. It just makes you wonder how you can be a defense attorney, you know? Somebody that's clearly guilty, and you're arguing on their behalf after all the harm and the hurt and the long-term damage that this one guy and all the chaos this guy has caused in all these women's lives. Cosby's attorney says, what does an 81-year-old man do in prison? How does he fight off the people who are trying to extort him or walk to the mess hall? This is all a bunch of BS, because you know he's going to be segregated because he's a high-profile inmate. So he's going to be in the special protection unit where it's not like they're going to throw him out in general population, where he's just going to be, you know, he could possibly be the victim of whatever sort of shenanigans go on out, you know, in general population. So that argument is nothing more than BS. Constant went on and stated, I wasn't sure what had actually happened, but the pain spoke volumes. This is part of the impact statement that she submitted to the court. The shame was overwhelming. Self-doubt and confusion kept me from turning to my family or friends as I normally did. I felt completely alone, unable to trust anyone, including myself. And obviously I'm not a woman, but from everything that I've read and understand about situations like these, that's a very common reaction to have, and common feelings and emotions to have when dealing with that type of traumatic event happening. So, of course, the first trial was ended in a mistrial. And the subsequent trial, obviously, he was found guilty. So one of the victims, one of the women who alleged that Cosby assaulted him, said, "So to say that he's too old to do that, to say that he should get a pass because it's taken this long to catch up to what he's done, what they're asking for is a get out of jail free card," which is exactly right. Their argument to the court was, he's 81 years old. Why should an 81-year-old man be punished for these crimes that happened so long ago? This case we're talking about happened 14 years ago. Now he's 81. Let's cut the guy a break. It was only 60 women. I mean, it's just unreal. The victims cannot be unraped. Unfortunately, all we can do is hold the perpetrator accountable, said Gianna Constant, the victim's mother, who testified Monday that her daughter's buoyant personality was forever changed after the attack. Absolutely shameful, horrible. And that's just one of at least 60 plus women that this happened to. It really just makes my blood boil, to be honest with you. More than a decade prior, Constant had sued Cosby in 2005, settling for nearly $3.4 million. In the deposition for that case, Cosby admitted to buying Quaaludes and giving women drugs and alcohol before sex, although he said every interaction was consensual. This guy is, without a doubt, a huge sociopath, if not a psychopath. He has absolutely no remorse, no conscience. Third time worked. And he'll go to his grave swearing up and down that he's an innocent man. Constant's allegations were only ones that could bring about a criminal case against Cosby, as the other accusations fell outside the statute of limitations. So this guy got away with it because the women waited too long, essentially, to report all these crimes out of fear, no doubt, out of fear of not being believed, out of fear of being labeled. I mean, we're talking about, in his heyday, he was the most popular, highest paid actor, comedian in this country for years. So you can imagine how hard it was and why these women waited and were so reluctant to come forward and make these accusations. How are you going to win a case against a guy that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars? We know it's just not going to happen. So if anybody has anything to say about why did these women never come forward, look it up. Educate yourself and understand why women don't come forward when they're raped or they're assaulted. It's not because it didn't happen. It's because of the society that we live in. That people are so fearful, that women are so fearful to bring this kind of allegation to light. There's so many layers that go into it, so many factors about why victims. James, he got sentenced 3 to 10 years. Hi, James. 3 to 10 years in prison, state prison. He'll be a convicted sexual assault, sexual predator, pedophile. He'll be registered on the sex registry. So he certainly didn't get what he deserved. I've been talking about this for a few minutes now. You know, whatever, he could have got life in prison now. The guy's 81 years old. He could have got life in prison. We don't know, obviously, how long he's going to live. But for what he did, we're talking about 60. This crime, excuse me, this case where he was just sentenced was only one case for one woman. Because all of the other cases. Thanks, Lana. You have a great day too. 60 women, all of their allegations due to the statute of limitations, they had expired because they waited too long to report his crimes against them. But this particular case happened in 2004 at his home in Pennsylvania. So that was still a chargeable crime, fortunately. So 3 to 10 years. Yeah. I mean, my opinion is this. You know, I'm thankful that the guy is going to be locked up until he dies, more than likely. If he serves his full sentence, he's going to be 91 when he gets done. I don't see the guy making it till 91. You know, I would be very surprised if he didn't pass away within, you know, a very short period of time after he transfers into prison. Because imagine being a multimillionaire, you know, at one time on top of the world, completely on top of the world, feeling you're untouchable, invincible, you know, basically worshipped by hundreds of millions of people. Going from that to being locked up behind bars and eating prison food. That's going to be a huge adjustment for him and adjustment for anybody you can imagine. So I don't see him he definitely isn't going to make it to even the 3 years. I would highly doubt. This is going to be too much for him to deal with. So the judge said when he sentenced him, I'm not permitted to treat him any differently based on who he is or who he was. As the victim said, Mr. Cosby, you took her beautiful, healthy young spirit and crushed it. The judge then went on to tell the victim, I heard the very clear impact on your life. Yes, he does, James, I agree. This guy is just the scum of the earth, man. Between, you know, the rape and the sexual assaults, you know, I put that right up there with being a pedophile, somebody that hurts children. I mean, just the absolute worst people on this earth. And this guy got away with it. No matter what, he's going to prison. He still gets the last laugh because he's never going to admit what he did. He got away. He lived 81 years as a free man, a multimillionaire who could have or get whatever he wanted for 81 years. So he's laughing on, you know, maybe he's laughing there, maybe he's not, I guess. But in my mind, he still comes out the winner because, you know, this guy should have never seen the light of day for the last 40 plus years. He should have been locked up that long ago because this stuff's been going on since who knows how long. Guys like this don't just flip a switch and start doing this overnight. This guy's probably been doing this since he was a teenager in his 20s. Who knows? And now, and then when he became, a famous comedian with a lot of money and then a lot of power, obviously he took advantage of that position with these women. And his whole shtick was to drug them with Quaaludes, give them some alcohol, and then render them basically immobile. So they were conscious. They would come in and out of consciousness, but they would be like the victim in this particular case said she felt like she was like a wet, limp noodle. She couldn't move. She wanted to move. She didn't want this happening, but she could. She was powerless. Her muscles just, it's like the connection between her muscles and her brain, they were numb, so she couldn't move. She had to lay there while this frickin' creep took advantage, molested, and raped her. And like I said, that's one woman out of this case. Donald Trump defending the judge. Really, I hate getting political on my channel because it's a good way to alienate viewers. But to take a stand on it, I don't agree with it. That's my personal view. He's not even giving this is his guy, right? This is his hand-picked guy. And nothing is going to sidetrack him from getting this guy appointed to the Supreme Court. He doesn't even want to let the process play itself out where all the facts, all the evidence, and it's not just Trump, it's the Republicans on that committee. None of them, the biggest one being Mitch McConnell, who has already publicly stated, this guy's going to get confirmed. Don't let all this stuff distract you. He's getting confirmed. They've already made up their mind. So they don't care. They don't care about the truth one bit. That's my opinion. That's everything that I'm seeing from them. They don't care about it. They want this guy confirmed. He's a far-right, conservative judge. I mean, if you look back on his rulings, I mean, that's you can't argue against that. That's just how which is why Trump handpicked him, and why and then of course Trump with his ego, it would be a bitter pill for him to swallow to say, wow, this, I screwed up, I messed up here. I haven't heard him say that once in terms of any of his staff that he's had that he appointed and then they left or he fired them. He's never once said, I made a mistake. He put the blame on them, which is typical Trump behavior. So what I think of it is it's ridiculous. I'm hoping that it doesn't happen because now with the second allegation coming to light, I mean, there was enough with just this one allegation in my mind that, hey, we need to put the brakes on this. We need to hear this thing out regardless of whether this woman brought this to law enforcement's attention. I mean, this is the highest court in the land. We need to listen and let this process. Let's let this woman talk. Let's listen. Let's hear what she has to say, and then make an informed choice based on that, and not a political one. And so that's my view on it. Trump and Republicans they're arguing, actually making that same argument that the Democrats are desperate. These are all political motives, which I'm not buying that. I think, if this was a Democratic president, my feelings on it would be the exact same. If say you know, of course, we know that Merrick Garland was appointed, or was not appointed. He was picked by President Obama to serve on the Supreme Court. McConnell blocked it, and that obviously never happened. But let's say that the same situation was brought up with Merrick Garland. My views would be exactly the same. If a woman came forward and was like, "Hey, we need to stop here. This guy, you know, forced himself on me at a frat party in the 80s, 30 some years ago," I'd say, "Hey, we do need to look into this. We can't just appoint this guy to the Supreme Court. I don't care what sort of judge, if he's a liberal judge or, you know, a conservative judge or, you know, a moderate judge in the middle. My opinion would be the exact same. We need to look at this allegation. We need to dig deeper into this guy's past. And now, like I said, now we got a second allegation here. I mean, what is happening to our country where lawmakers are rushing to appoint somebody to the highest court in this land in spite of the fact that there's now multiple allegations of sexual misconduct against this guy? It's surreal times that we're living in, to be sure. So we'll wait and see what happens, I guess. I'm hoping that I can be pleasantly surprised and something happens to stop this. Or, you know, obviously I wasn't a fan of the guy's the pick with Kavanaugh to begin with, but we'll see. No matter what kind of a judge, or which way he votes, I don't want a guy that's been a sexual assaulter, or up to whatever degree. I don't want him serving on the frickin' Supreme Court. That's just... You want to pick a conservative judge, Trump? Go ahead. But let's pick a guy that hasn't forced himself on other women. I mean, come on, man. But of course, that we all know Trump's history too, so it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black there, because he's been accused by multiple women himself of, you know, indecent behavior, to say the least. So kind of getting back to this whole Cosby thing, I'm going to read some of the victim impact statement which she provided to the court. She said, "To truly understand the impact that sexual assault has had on my life, you have to understand the person that I was before it happened. At the time of the assault, I was 30 years old and a fit, confident athlete. I was strong and skilled, with great reflexes, agility, and speed. When I graduated from high school in Toronto, I was one of the top 3 female high school basketball players in Canada. Dozens of American colleges lined up to offer me basketball scholarships, and I chose the University of Arizona. For 4 years, I was a shooting guard on the women's basketball team, scoring up to 30 points a game. It was an amazing time in my life. I learned a lot, developed a circle of really good friends, many of them teammates, traveled around the U.S. to compete." So I'm not going to go into reading this whole document. It's online if you want to find it. It's the victim impact statement. I think it's 6 pages long. I'm sure there's a lot of... I'm going to read it, but I'm not going to read it during this live stream because I don't feel it's necessary. But in the letter, Constan, who's the victim, said she couldn't talk, eat, sleep, or socialize after Cosby assaulted her back in 2004 at his home. She added, "The psychological, emotional, and financial bullying included a slander campaign in the media that left my entire family reeling in shock and disbelief. And this was what I was talking about before. Imagine that you're a woman who's been raped and assaulted by one of the most powerful men performers in the world. Does it seem strange or odd to you that you'd be reluctant to contact the authorities, to tell your family, to tell friends, to tell coworkers about it? What's going to happen? Well, for a lot of women, what they fear is going to happen, and what does happen is the reality. And that is that they're demonized. They're considered to be sluts. It's their fault. They asked for it. It's not the guy's fault. There's no accountability for the guy. And then we're talking about Bill Cosby, America's dad. That's what he was known as for years, America's dad. This slime ball. This guy was one of the greatest actors, performers in the world. If you think about who he truly was in reality, in his personal life, and then the images that he portrayed on the stage during his comedy routines and on TV, you know, say for instance with the Cosby Show, they were just complete opposites. And yet all of us, I remember Bill Cosby, you know, the Cosby Show was on the air as when I was a kid in the 80s. And, you know, he had this all-American persona that, I mean, even to this day, because of that, because of this image that he portrayed and put out there for the public, there's still people, including his wife, including his kids, who are still standing by him firm, dead set that all of this is made up, make-believe. All these women have decided to put their name out in the public spotlight to be scrutinized, vilified, threatened. Sometimes their lives are threatened, death threats. They've all decided to do this because it's fake. Never happened. That's their logic. It just makes completely no sense. They're in denial. And it's not, like I said, his wife is in denial. His kids are in denial. They don't want to admit it. Thanks for watching, James. Have a good day. So I'm going to go on and talk a little bit about, then I'm going to wrap this live stream up. Constant, the victim, said that she described the time right after his assault while she still had to work with Cosby in the Temple University athletic department. The sound of his voice over the phone felt like a knife going through my guts. The sight of the man who drugged and sexually assaulted me coming into the basketball office filled me with dread. So that's the environment that woman had to work in. Picture that woman is your sister, your daughter, your wife. To kind of grasp just how hurtful and significant, troubling, distraught, all those words that you can think of. So while Cosby was on bail since April after being convicted, he was living at home on bail. His 81-year-old wife threw a birthday party for him back in July. complete with a live 5-piece jazz band that started jamming at 7 a.m. So you get the idea. I think I'm going to wrap this stream up. Good news is this creep got sentenced 3 to 10 years. Hopefully the guy dies, rots in prison. Ten of the women that accused that creep of sexual abuse were in the courthouse to witness the sentencing. I hope that they got some sort of, I don't like using the word closure for this. I hope they got some sort of sense of justice, I guess. But at least this guy, to some degree, is going to have to answer for what he did. 3 to 10 years. He's 81 years old. Hopefully this POS dies behind bars, because that's definitely what he deserves. No matter how long he serves in there, it's not going to be enough time for the harm that this creep caused. He's ruined lives that'll never be recovered, lives that'll never be the same. It is a time for justice, Mr. Cosby. This is all circled back to you, Judge O'Neill said. The day has come. The time has come. Mr. Cosby looked to be heading straight to prison as the judge initially denied him a request to remain free on bail while he pursues an anticipated appeal. But after the defense argued the point, he went back to chambers to consider the question further. So, right now, I don't have a definitive answer on whether this guy is going directly to prison or if the judge is going to allow him to remain free on bond, even though he was just sentenced, just because his defense team is planning on appealing the conviction. Absolutely absurd. I'm going to update this quickly to see if any new information has came. Because it would be nice to know if he's going straight to prison or if they're going to let him remain free. Mr. Cosby has shown no remorse, and there's been no justice for many of the accusers who were barred from a court by the arbitrary time limits imposed by the statute of limitations. So Cosby left court in handcuffs. Escorted out of the courtroom after being sentenced. So Judge Stephen O'Neill denied him bail. This is a serious crime he was convicted for. This is a sexual assault crime, the judge said. So let's hope that this guy is going directly to prison. So, indeed he is. He will not be allowed to remain free on bail, as his defense team argued, because they're going to be appealing the conviction. Thankfully, this guy is headed to prison right now today. 3 to 10 years. Scum. Bill Cosby's judge said no one is above the law. And no one should be treated differently or disproportionately. I have given great weight to the victim impact testimony in this case, and it was powerful. Well, what more can you say, huh? This guy's going away 3 to 10 years, thankfully. In this case, later than all of us would have liked to have seen, or I guess most of us. But at least he's going to have to answer to some degree for what he did. more than likely he's going to die in prison right where he belongs. Thanks for watching this news story. As always, appreciate it. If you liked it, smash that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Hit the notification bell. And from Wisconsin Living, we'll see you later. Take care, y'all.